But he said, no, let's talk about mortgage. So I said, okay, you got it. Kurt, you have two friends? I'm kind of threw me off guard here. You know, I haven't been in the mortgage business for 30 years, but I've been in the financial business for 30 years. So you know, and everybody starts and they have a mentor, and I thought I'd tell a little story on you know, kind of what set my path in the banking industry. As a young banker, I 15 years in commercial banks, and the last 15 have been in credit unions. As a young banker, you know, you want to look your best, so I went and had a suit tailored. I know it's hard to believe, but had a suit tailored, and I went to pick it up, and I get in there and I'm trying it on, and it fits great, and I'm thinking I look real well, and I go to put my hands in the pocket, and I said, you know, there's no pockets in these. And the tailor looks at me and he says, well, you said you're a banker, aren't you? And I said, yes, I am. And he says, since when does a banker get into his own pockets? 30 years later, I'm still in the business. Yeah. Still no pockets. I would just talk a little bit about, you know, you can talk about the economic things that are happening right now. Rates are, you know, in the 30-some years, I don't think I've seen them this low. They've bounced up a little bit this last month, which gets members screaming, but still they're extremely low. Probably going to see that for a little while. The biggest thing I see in the community that we run into on a regular basis is just home values. You know, across the nation, you're starting to see some rises in places. Cowles County reports median income price, median price is going up, but I kind of look at what's happening on a per square foot basis, and I haven't seen a whole lot over the last year. It's been pretty stable, so we're looking forward to some of that moving up. We got a lot of, I can't tell you the number of people that will come in and would like to take advantage of the lower rates, but you can't get a value out of the home. So, but we think that's going to get better. Other things that are going to affect us over the next 6 months, actually it comes into effect at the start of the year. In 2010, July 2010, what's known as the Dodd-Frank Act was passed. And that was in response, obviously, to the mortgage crisis. And my observation of when government makes a rule is kind of like, have you ever been, you know, it was probably in school, or you had a boss or somebody that said, you know, if one person in the group messes up, everybody pays. So you're in class, and well, Reineke's not here, so Jimmy's over there, and he's talking during the test, and so the teacher says, nobody gets to go to recess. And I've always been kind of one to raise my hand, so I says, what the hell, why don't you just beat the hell out of Jimmy and the rest of us leave us alone? But government kind of takes, it's been my observation, is a few people screw up and everybody pays the price. And so out of the Dodd-Frank Act comes several things. The first thing we saw come up was we couldn't order our own appraisals anymore. I couldn't call John or anybody up. I had to call somebody that could call them. Then the SAFE Act. As a person dealing in a mortgage and dealing with somebody's home, I had to be, of course, after the no pocket story, you'll probably see that this is the right thing to do. I had to be fingerprinted and run through the FBI database, and I have a number that anybody can get in with the feds and look me up and make sure I'm doing the right things. You know, I visited Alcatraz a couple summers ago, and that's kind of what they did when those people went in there. The other thing they established was what they call the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB for short. And it's kind of the grand poobah of financial regulation. It oversees the FDIC, the NCUA, if you're talking credit unions. It just oversees everybody. And they've come out with various rules. The newest one that's going to be taking effect in January is what they call the Qualified Mortgage Act. And what that does is it tells the lender what a borrower has to meet before you can make the loan. If you make a loan that's not a qualified mortgage, as a lender, you're on the hook. The borrower has a lot of rights to sue you if something goes bad. This, a couple things it does, it limits debt to income ratio to 43%. I mean, it's not a bad thing, although when you look at debt to income ratios, the ratios just isn't the whole story. It limits the amount of fees that you can charge a person to 3%, which is, again, not an issue on a larger loan, but when you're talking about smaller loans, you get around the $60,000 range. People that want the smaller houses, the first-time home buyers, then that starts creating a problem. It's easy to exceed that 3%. So you got to stay within those two boundaries. There's no interest-only loans allowed, no negative AM loans, no terms beyond 30 years, no balloon loans. All things that make sense. They have 8 areas you got to meet to be a qualified mortgage. You have to check the credit history. You have to, and these are all things we currently do, but during the boom times, people kind of lost their way, and some weren't watching these things. Current income and assets, you have to pay monthly payment for the home loan, monthly payments to other properties, monthly costs of mortgage-related obligations, property taxes, debts the borrower has, debt to income ratio. And it spells out the documents you have to gather in order to make sure that these things happen. If, as of January of 2014, if your loan does not fit the definition of qualified mortgage, Fannie and Freddie won't buy it. So that is probably going to create a problem. Last year, the credit union industry exceeded $100 billion in mortgage loans for the first time ever. It's been a growing industry within the credit union movement. A survey of the credit unions that do mortgage found that 37% of those, if you extrapolate that out, $37 billion in mortgages, do not fit the QM standard, which means they would not be sellable to Fannie or Freddie. If you're a lending institution, those of you who've been around the savings and loan industry, you know that you don't want to keep a ton of that stuff on your books. So if you have no market to sell it, you have a couple options. Either you don't do it, or you do some of it, or you don't do most of it. The banks typically sell 90% of their stuff. Credit unions hold on at about 50 and sell about 50. So we portfolio a lot more. But what you're going to find is probably a couple different things. Number one, credit unions are going to get creative, or somebody's going to get creative and learn how to do these things and accept the risk, or some of it's going to dry up, and it's going to be hard for the first-time home buyer or the other people to get in on these programs. If, you know, the other part of this is it becomes, if I make a non-qualified mortgage to somebody that comes in, and I think I've gone through all these steps, and I have to keep documentation of this for 3 years, if during that 3 years, those people default, and they feel like I didn't do my due diligence and check everything that I should check, they have the right to sue us, and whatever that means in court, whether it means forgive the mortgage or whatever. So, you know, you're asking a financial institution to take some risks there without knowing. When you got a new program like this, we don't know what all this, what's it mean to incur employee status? How much do we have to do? Until you get some court cases where people have actually sued and there's been some decisions, you really don't know the rules you're playing by. So it's really kind of a leap of faith. I think what's going to happen, I think two different things for credit unions, it's hard for me to speak to banks, but banks like to sell most of their stuff, so I think some of them are going to back away from some of these that don't fit the mold. And so it's either going to create an opportunity for credit unions to do more stuff, or it's just going to create sort of turmoil in the market as far as people getting. So we'll see what happens in January. That's a major thing that's coming up that's really got my attention. Trying to just think about ways we can work with this and keep the credit union safe and keep doing what we do and keep things live. I thought I'd give you one more story before I open up for questions, and then you're kind of on your own after that. Albert Einstein passed, and when he got to heaven, he was informed that his room wasn't ready. He said, you know, they asked him, and they said, I hope you don't mind waiting in the dorm. We really tried to have your room ready, but it's not. And he says, that's no problem. He says, I can work with that. So they take him over to the dorm, and they comes in, and he introduces him to, this is your first roommate. He has an IQ of 180. Einstein says, that's wonderful. We can discuss mathematics. Second roommate comes out and he says, my IQ is 150. And Albert once again says, that's wonderful. We can talk about physics. Third roommate comes out and he says, I have an IQ of 100. And Albert Einstein once again saying, you know, that's great news. We can discuss the latest plays at the theater. Just then another man comes around the corner and he says, I'm your fourth roommate. He says, unfortunately, I only have an IQ of 180. Albert smiles back to him and he says, so what do you think interest rates are going to do? With that, I just open up questions if you had, so you get what you get.
I just wondered if Fibre Federal was going to help finance Capstone.
Finance who?
Capstone.
We do some commercial lending, but not at that level. That's a little bit about our area. John?
It's my observation that Dodd-Frank, all it did was reiterate what was on the books already. Mortgage lenders got greedy and caused the problems that we faced over the last few years. Not the appraisers who overappraised the property. So.
John, I would never blame the appraisers.
We did follow the prices up as they went. But this whole thing with the government having these regulations, I think they were always there. That maybe they're going to actually enforce them, which makes me laugh because it's the government. So seriously. The same thing could happen tomorrow.
Well,
it could all run away with itself and nobody do anything about it, least of all the government. So.
You're not getting a good argument.
I don't want to ask about interest rates based on your IQ, but
Yeah.
what's your position on Glass-Steagall?
On Glass-Steagall?
Glass-Steagall Act. How about you, Mom? I thought he was, never mind.
One of my favorite mortgage stories is a 25-year-old married couple that between the two of them were making 40 grand as a fast food place and qualified for a mortgage for $369,000. Now, how does anybody's math get that kind of game done? Yeah. That is just one of those questions where it makes no sense, where Dodd-Frank ends up kind of fixing some of the nonsensical stuff that went on. But at the same point, commercial lending is so tied up and so tight. Why does it fall over? I don't get that.
Well, I don't know the instances of this couple. It might have been when they were doing no doc loans or no income verification type things, which I would agree with you is not something, as a lender, not something I would be into. But I'm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that why is it that there's that disparity? I mean, in lending practices, how does it even get that wide?
It follow the money, Pat. A lot of it. Well, I don't know what you say other than greed. I mean, it's money. You follow the money, and somebody will buy it.
Well, I just my personal view is follow the greed to that individual also, not just the institution. The individual is greedy, buying something they can't afford, and that individual greed is met by somebody else.
Well, that's part of our job, if we're doing it right, is to counsel. I mean, I can tell you there's been times when I've told told people you're overpaying for that, or you're doing that. It doesn't always make realtors happy, but the first goal is to make sure, in my mind, our members are taken care of and they're not getting into something they shouldn't be in. Hal, Mr.
A
Hal.
lot of people come to me and say, I get 130% loan on my house, should I do it? And I say, no, you shouldn't do it. I lost friends over just saying that to them. Both of them? Yeah.
Oh, that's where Kurt got the friends.
Are you available afterwards? Or not?
Yeah, I'm available afterwards if somebody has questions. Sure.
I just have a question. Is Fibre thinking about expanding in the near future?
Fibre, we have expanded. We picked up the counties over on the Oregon side of the river.
When are you going to open?
You know, you never know. We're always looking for right opportunities. We realize we need, part of when you take on that kind of area, NCUA, our governing body, says within a certain period of time we expect you to make a presence. So you're going to see something in that area, but to tell you when and stuff, I don't really know.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And on behalf of the Pioneer Lions, I don't know that this will fit in your saddlebag with all your travels that
Yeah.
you already do. But
I know.
it might just fit in there, so thank you.
I know if you want to talk about motorcycles, I could have been here all day.
I fully expect that.
Yeah.